I talk a lot about the Atari 7800 on this channel, and I'll admit that I spend most of that time praising it. It's my favorite console of all time, and I really feel that it's underappreciated and was underutilized, especially during its retail life. But it wasn't perfect, and I doubt you need me to prove that to you. There were design flaws and poor decisions right from the start. Moving the pause, select, and reset back to the console wasn't a great decision. And I'm sure it was to help with compatibility with 2600 games, but it still felt like a huge step back from the 5200, especially when we saw what the NES and Master System were doing. The controller, known as the Pro line, was not a great design. With a little foresight and research, I'm sure they could have come to the conclusion that Nintendo and Sega did, that the joystick was out and gamepads were the wave of the future. We could continue, but I just wanted to make the point that bad decisions were made. And this continued into some of the games and releases on the console. There were questionable choices, arcade titles being released 3 to 7 years after they hit arcades, and an underrepresentation of new, popular genres on the console. There were good releases too, and some games that bucked the trend. When I found out that Double Dragon and Rampage were available on the 7800, well, I was really excited. Those were two games that absolutely enthralled me. Growing up, I had an NES, and we had Double Dragon on that console. But the NES was hooked up in the living room and was my mom's console. The thought of having that same game on my 7800, down in the kids' room where I have unrestricted access to it, felt like a dream come true. And Rampage was such a cool idea to me as a kid that I fell in love with it from the moment that I learned what it was. You mean we get to play as the monsters, and it's our job to destroy the cities, not save them? Where do I sign up? Of course, Rampage is a fantastic idea, but most people would say the actual gameplay gets old fast. But it was still a fun and cool idea, and a great addition to the Atari 7800 library. But despite my excitement, and what these releases meant for the 7800, they were still flawed, in very many ways. And there was one main flaw that drove me nuts about Double Dragon in particular. You see, Double Dragon on the 7800 used some very strange colors and designs in my opinion. There seemed to be a lot of pinkish hues and odd colors used, even on the main character. And the way the upper body was done on the player sprites and a few others, well, it made them look like they had big, beautiful heaving chests that would not be out of place on a woman. That is to say that, well, they had boobs, okay? At least in my young mind, that's what I equated it to. There's more issues for Double Dragon, of course. The incredible difficulty, the fact that the enemies almost always seem to get the jump on me, and some missing elements from the arcade. Rampage, on the other hand, didn't have many noticeable flaws to me. I felt the game looked, and mostly played, great. I did have issues climbing buildings, but that was probably down to the controller more than anything else. Still, these games were great additions to the 7800 library, and ones I loved from back in the day. I will admit that us kids wanted NES games on the 7800. We wanted Super Mario Bros., Castlevania, and others to make an appearance, so no matter how it turned out, I was just thrilled to have Double Dragon on the Pro system. Many years later, I finally got involved with and learned about the homebrew community, and the homebrew games that were coming out for the 7800. I was late to the party in a lot of ways, but I took in as much as I could, and tried to get my hands on everything. And this is about the time that I learned of Kevmos3's incredible graphical fix to Double Dragon. I watched No Swear Gamer's video on it, and even reached out to Kevmos himself to see if I could get a version to play on my 7800. It was the fix I always dreamed of. Unfortunately, as I stated before, I was late to the party, and would have to settle for emulation to experience the graphical hack for Double Dragon. It was great, but I wanted to have it for myself, as something I could stick in my Pro system and play like any other game. But the cartridges are rare, much rarer than most other games and limited run homebrews on the console, so I just had to be okay with never getting one. But lo and behold, earlier this year, one went up on eBay, and I just had to have it. I purchased it the second I saw it, and it arrived in the mail about a week later. So here it is, one of my holy grails, Kevmos3's Double Dragon / Rampage Dual Cart. The cartridge itself is really good looking. At first glance, it looks like nothing special actually. The art style on the label is a little reminiscent of the anniversary cartridges from AtariAge a few years back, with game titles lining the background while the classic Rampage and Double Dragon art sit front and center. The end label shares real estate between the two games' names, but the difference is comes on the side of the cartridge. There is a button there that can be pushed in or popped out. This is how you switch between games before you boot on the console. When pushed in, you have Rampage, and when it's in the out position, you're playing Double Dragon. My label says it was produced in 2015, but I had heard that they were sent out as kits that you had to assemble yourself. If this is bad information, then please let me know, because it sounds like a weird way of doing things. But then again, this isn't a traditional cart. But enough gawking at the glossy labels and the button on this cartridge. It's what's on the inside that matters the most. I finally have Kevmos3's awesome graphical hacks in physical form, and I want to share them with all of you. I mainly want to focus on Double Dragon, but let's take a look at Rampage first. To me, the improvements to Rampage aren't as obvious, especially if you haven't played it recently. But hopefully this side-by-side comparison will make it more evident. And it is very evident. I never realized how plain the graphics were for Rampage. I knew the colors were a bit odd for the buildings, but when looking at these two side by side, or when playing one after another, it becomes very apparent that the original is very plain. Now don't get me wrong, Activision did a great job on the 7800, especially by the standards set in the 1980s. But it's clear that they could have gone so much further beyond what they did if they wanted to. Kevmos3 puts Activision to shame with the detail, the backgrounds, and most apparently, the colors of the buildings. The player sprites don't seem to be changed much, however. I never thought those were bad, but I never thought any of Rampage looked all that bad. What's cool about the characters in any version of Rampage on the Atari 7800 is how expressive they can actually be. When walking, or pressing up or down on the D-pad, you can change the look on their face, and it's really fun to do. The improvements for Rampage are apparent right from the start, as the old washed-out colors of the original title screen have been improved with better clarity and contrast. Overall, Kevmos3's improvements to Rampage are really well done, and something that I never knew I wanted until I seen them for the first time, and especially when doing a side-by-side comparison. But enough of that, let's see the improvements made to Double Dragon. And boy, is this the graphics I wish the game had since day one. The colors are more in line with the arcade and NES versions. There are a lot less of the odd pinkish colors used. Everything once again looks a little more detailed, and what's this? The player sprites no longer have big beautiful bosoms hanging out of their shirts. Fantastic! Most of the sprites look much better, and while it's hard to tell if this is just due to better color choices or actual tweaks when playing it alone, a side-by-side comparison should make it clear. And I bet there will be people who prefer the original for one reason or another. And that's fine. Nostalgia is a heck of a drug, and the reason why I don't mind the audio for the 7800 version of Donkey Kong Jr. But for me personally, this is the fix I always wished for. The levels themselves look much better too. I really like levels 1, 2, and 3 for their improvements, but I always enjoyed the original bridge stage for some reason. And I still might prefer that over the improvement, but it's really close. Plus I'm an idiot, so take that with a grain of salt. I do think that Kevmos3 could have went even further with changes and improvements, but I think he was going for more of a soft stroke than a total overhaul. And with that said, I'm sure this was a ton of work regardless. I'll show a few side-by-side comparisons here as we wrap up. This video isn't a true deep dive or in-depth comparison, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the community and hobbyists have been improving and tweaking these games all these years later. And some people won't care or even be impressed. But for some of us, it's just incredible to see the fixes we used to dream of as kids. Kevmos3 did incredible work on the graphics hacks, or maybe graphical improvements would be more appropriate. And there are a ton more, like improvements to Scrapyard Dog's silly-looking character sprite, or you can download a version of Scrapyard Dog where you play as the dog trying to rescue the human. There are enhancements to games like Tank Command, but even those can't save that turd. And there's just so many more that I'm not going to mention here. I also want to help promote the fact that there is an Atari Jaguar Game Jam for 2024. The host, Boris K., has posted details to AtariIO, and there will be prizes such as a cash purse, a digital badge to post on your site and game, and a possible publishing collaboration with Songbird Productions, which is one of, if not the biggest publisher, of Jaguar games today. If you're interested, I'll have a link in the description for you to learn more and how to enter. The deadline is October of this year, so get involved in Homebrew for the Atari Jaguar and the Jag Jam 2024 today. And thank you to Boris K for attempting to make something cool, fun, and rewarding for people interested in Atari Jaguar development. And with that, it's time to wrap up this video and Homebrew Month here on the channel. It's been fun bringing you all this content regarding Homebrew, and hopefully it's helped to shed some light on the amazing developers and games. But don't worry, we'll continue to cover Homebrew throughout the year as we always do, but we'll go back to mixing in some history and other Atari stuff with it. Also, this video is a little bit different from what I normally do on the channel, so let me know if you liked it or not in the comments below. And let me know what you think of Kevmos3's graphical hacks. Do you prefer his graphics or the original? And let me know if there are any other cool graphic hacks that I should look at in the future. Leave all this and more in the comments down below. And please, like the video and subscribe if you haven't. We do 2 videos a week, so hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload. And I'd like to thank the following classy Atarians for supporting the Atari Network. You can too via Patreon for $5 a month, or by grabbing a YouTube membership. Both get you access to the same extra content and get you shoutouts at the end of every video. So thank you to My Own Celestial, OG Hugo, Head Trauma Bob, Jolt 7800, Ball Gobbler, Socrates 63, Ben's the Spook, Mr. Shua TV, and Jeremiah Thomas. I couldn't do this without all your support, so thank you. And with that, I think it's time to sign off for now. I hope you all enjoyed Homebrew Month here at the Atari Network. So until next time, I'm the 7800 Pro Gamer, and I want to thank you for watching the video. And remember to stay classy, Atarians.